Today we're taking a close look at the Winnipeg Jets. We heard lots of comments and a few bombshells from the post-game media availability after their last game against the Kraken on Sunday. Does Mark Scheifele want out? Will there be wholesale changes within the lineup, within the coaching staff? What about the GM? We'll discuss all we know so far about the Jets' upcoming offseason potential moves. I also want to talk about the Top Shelf Hockey Bracket Challenge on NHL.com, as well as the results from our poll on who's going to win the playoff series. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of things to discuss today. We're going to get into the Jets here in a few moments, but first up, a few other quick tidbits of information, a couple things on the playoffs, of course, which get underway here this evening. We found out that Freddie Anderson in Carolina is not going to be able to go tonight, so Antti Raanta will be the starting goaltender for the Hurricanes. I guess Anderson's still kind of considered day-to-day. Not quite clear exactly when he may be able to enter the series. Of course, if Raanta plays well and the Canes are winning, they certainly won't feel the need to rush. And, of course, may not even really need to get him in there right away, because if Raanta keeps playing well, they might just ride the hot hand. It's really hard to say. We finally found out in St. Louis who their starting goaltender is going to be for Game 1 against the Minnesota Wild, and it will be youngster Ville Husso, although he's not really a whole lot different in age than Jordan Binnington, really, to be honest. Binnington obviously has more NHL experience. Husso's a little bit more of a late bloomer, but certainly, as much as Binnington did improve his game down the stretch, I think it's fair to say for the entire season that Husso was a more reliable tender. So we will see where that goes. Of course, it's going to be a tough challenge against the Wild, and obviously they have the experienced Binnington on the bench, who has a Stanley Cup under his resume here from a few years back, in case they need to go in a different direction. In the case of, also with St. Louis, actually, Marco Scandella is also out tonight for the St. Louis Blues. With the Leafs, we got confirmation that Andre Kasha is good to go, so he is in. Michael Bunting is still due to injury, is also going to be out for the Leafs tonight here as well. A couple quick signings when it comes to a few prospects. The Blue Jackets have announced that they've signed Kirill Marchenko to a 2-year ELC. The 21-year-old winger played this year in the KHL, putting up 20 points in 36 games. So certainly, a decent prospect as well. Gets a 2-year ELC due to his age. Also saw the Panthers announcing that they've signed prospect Santu Kanunen as well. He also gets a 2-year ELC. Again, a little bit older. He's from the 2018 NHL draft, taken really late, 207th overall. Been playing over in Europe over the past 3 or 4 seasons, and now is ready to make the jump. It's quite likely that both players will most likely need time in the American Hockey League before getting a taste of the NHL. Another quick note too, we haven't had any more coaching real announcements or changes, firings, etc. As of yet, but there is word that New Jersey is kind of teetering on potentially making some changes. I know Lindy Ruff himself said all players, coaches, and everybody was being evaluated. I've heard some insiders like Elliot Friedman kind of giving it a 50-50 shot right now. I know there was a few other insiders earlier in the season saying there was a good chance Lindy Ruff would be replaced at the end of the year based on how everything had gone. So we'll see where that goes. Won't be surprised if we see a few more teams making changes here in the next couple of days for the teams that are already out of the playoffs. Of course, as I want to talk about here as well, I've launched the Top Shelf Hockey League through the NHL Bracket Challenge, so I'd love for you to be able to sign up and submit your brackets within our league so we can have some fun together as a community. I will post a screenshot here on the screen so you can see, and the link will be in the pinned comment down below, so I'd love it if you'd go on and submit your playoff predictions, like I said, so we can just have a little bit of fun together as a Top Shelf Hockey YouTube community here. Obviously, there's it's hard making predictions, and it's tough. I know I gave you my preview and predictions video not too long ago. I put up polls on the community tab on our channel here as well. I'm going to show you some results. I mean, every different matchup has anywhere from like 600-700 votes all the way up to close to 2,000 in some cases. But right now, according to the community for the votes so far, we have the predictions here as follows. We have the Oilers over the Kings. 75% of voters have picked the Oilers to win. We have the Calgary Flames over the Dallas Stars with 90% of voters picking the Flames, so that's a landslide. No big shock there. Of course, the St. Louis, Minnesota one, a little bit surprising, is 65-35 in favor of the Wild. I thought that one might be a little bit closer. I know I picked the Blues, but as I said in that video, I think it could go 7 games, and it could come right down to the wire, and I wouldn't be surprised really if it went in either direction. And of course, the Avalanche are picked to win here by the community by a landslide, 94% to 6 for Nashville in that series. So obviously some pretty lopsided ones there in a couple of cases. In the Eastern Conference as well, we have the New York Rangers favored to win the Penguins, according to our community, 73% to 27% for Pittsburgh. But if you look at the odds makers and the betting sites, Pittsburgh is favored. So it's kind of odd. I'm not really sure why Pittsburgh would be favored in that series. The Canes are 68% to 32% for the Bruins. So, of course, most people think Carolina will beat Boston, again, which is what I picked as well. Another big landslide here, the Panthers at 89% to 11% for the Capitals. So obviously majority of people by a long shot here think Florida beats Washington. And the other one that surprised me the most here is the Lightning are picked to be victorious over the Maple Leafs, which isn't a huge shock, but the part is how lopsided that vote is. 73% picked the Lightning, whereas only 27% picked the Maple Leafs. I know the Maple Leafs with such a large fan base, many of which I know there's lots of Leaf fans that watch this channel, so obviously I'm a little surprised. If you haven't already voted, you still got time. Obviously those polls will not be coming down anytime soon. They're not time sensitive, but obviously, once a few games have taken place, it's not really fair to place your votes considering that you have an advantage on the results at that point. But I'd love to know what everybody thinks. If you haven't had time to go onto the channel's community tab to make your votes just so we can see what everybody thinks, that would be great if you could. And like I said, as well as go on to the link in the pinned comment and submit your bracket to the NHL Bracket Challenge in the Top Shelf Hockey Community League that I've set up. Now, on to the Winnipeg Jets. Of course, they had their final game on Sunday due to a rescheduling situation because of a snowstorm a little while back against the Seattle Kraken. It's the only game on the schedule. Everybody else's season was over, at least the regular season, and the game kind of got, overshadowed by a lot of other stuff. A lot of people even forgot it was going on. But afterwards, when they did their post-game media, which is like for many of these players, will be their last, media availability before they take off for the summer, there was a lot of interesting things said, and man, there was a few bombs dropped, in my opinion, between Mark Scheifele, Paul Stastny, etc. We did get word as well through Sportsnet writer Ken Wiebe, who covers the Jets, that GM Kevin Cheveldayoff is getting a 3-year contract extension, so we know there's not going to be any change in that regard. Chevy did speak today as well to the media. We found out as well when it comes to the coaching staff that a full search is going to be taking place, and there very well could have everybody replaced. Basically what he said was that they're going to conduct a full extensive search. Interim head coach Dave Lowry was welcome to apply. The assistant coaches, he said, were welcome to look for work elsewhere, but we were told that you never know, depending on who the head coach is. Once our search is complete, they may wish to have you back, and there might be opportunities here, but I would imagine that they're not going to wait around to find out who that's going to be, that they're going to probably take work and employment wherever they can get or whatever they decide to do. So I would suspect that there's a good chance, at least, that they're probably going in a completely new direction with a completely new coaching staff. At least that's the feeling I got based on the comments that were made. But of course, a couple of things though. When at one point we had Blake Wheeler and Paul Stastny out taking questions. Wheeler was asked if the team didn't play to their systems or kind of evaluating the season, and he said to him it was clear that their players didn't play to their systems. The responsibility lies on the players to execute, and they didn't do it. Now, during that question as well, Paul Stastny also kind of interjected and said some very interesting comments, saying that they have to be held accountable. It's a player on player, and we've got to have more respect for each other. When you don't have that, when you don't care about the teammate next to you and you just care about what you're doing in certain individual things, that starts to bleed into the game. That was, to me, a bit of a bombshell statement from Paul Stastny, basically telling us, without naming names and without really getting into more detail, that they have locker room issues and that there's some players on that team that are more concerned right now with their own individual performances as opposed to the overall team game. And I can't help but wonder, and this is just my opinion, nothing coming from an insider, although I have heard other insiders, like on the 32 Thoughts podcast today with Merrick and Friedman talking, they kind of said the same sort of thing. They wonder if he's referring to Mark Scheifele. Now, I never would have thought this about Scheifele before. I've been a fan of Scheifele's the majority of his career, although I must say the last couple of seasons, I've kind of, I wouldn't say I lost respect for him, but I guess I haven't been quite as big of a fan about some of the things. Like, it started with the Jake Evans hit. Didn't like the hit, but I was willing to, obviously continue cheering for him because he's still a good player and everybody makes mistakes. And you know what? As much as I didn't like the hit, it happens, right? And I guess we'll see. But then, he's been shown to be kind of not a good look with the lack of back checking and showing to be a little lazy on the defensive side of the game. And just wondered if his heart's not into it anymore, and if he just was really wanting a change. He couldn't help but wonder that. It's not a good look. And then during the Mark Scheifele media availability, now I didn't get to see this all as it was happening live. I cut it all within a couple hours later, so I don't know what order they all spoke in. Doesn't really matter too much. But Scheifele says when he was asked about his season, he said that he would have been close to returning because he missed the last 9 games with a shoulder injury. He got hit against the Ottawa Senators and just, a clean hit, but suffered a shoulder injury as part of the play. Said if they would have been going to playoffs, he likely would have been ready to go here shortly. So that's tough on that sense. But he also says that, that he's going to be having a fairly tough conversation with the GM. He needs to know the future direction of the team. Says he loves Winnipeg, but he's still in his prime. He's obviously admitted that he still has things to work on, but he said that he's happy with his game, happy with his physical conditioning and health, and that he's going to do what's best for him. So you get Mark Scheifele up there turning the conversation about what's best for him, what's best for his career, Mark, and then you get Stastny saying that they've got essentially players that don't necessarily care and respect their teammates, and it's bleeding into the game. You have to start to think that there could be some locker room issues there, and that Scheifele might be right at the forefront of the issue. At least that's kind of connecting the dots, my interpretation of what they're saying. I guess we may never know exactly if I'm right or not, but it does not look good. We already talked about before the possibility of a Scheifele trade. There was talk from a few different insiders saying that Scheifele had not asked for a trade, but they got the impression based on what their sources were telling them that he hadn't requested it, but he would welcome it and he would kind of be okay with a change of scenery. So there is that, and that's kind of showing to be that much more true now. And obviously, like I said, it's fine to want a change of scenery, but it just, to me, Mark Scheifele came across as very arrogant, self-centered, and not caring about the team. Like he does, I guess he wants to know about the team direction, but I get that he's approaching the end of his 20s. He's in his prime. He hasn't won yet, but players need to sometimes take a hard look at themselves in the mirror and be like, I'm a big part of this team, and if we haven't won, it's not like it's everybody else's fault and not mine. Like, I'm part of this too, and it just didn't really seem like there was much ownership there besides the comment of saying that, he's got things to work on as well. But it just, I don't know, to me it was just a bad look. It just didn't come off good. Wasn't overly thrilled with his comments. So, for Jets fans, I'm sure you're probably looking to saying, you know what, we're probably going to see a Mark Scheifele trade, and you're probably going to get a pretty good return. He's got 2 years left at $6 million. He's been a productive player for a team where he doesn't have to be a top center. I think it'd be better for him. I think he's proven that he can be a real good player, but he's not necessarily the guy who's going to be like the guy to take you to the Stanley Cup. So if he can be more of a complimentary piece like some other players have had to be, I think that would be something that he's better suited for. But it's just really, really telling to get this kind of insight into the Jets locker room and where things are at. And like especially what Stastny said, it was a well-respected veteran guy to make that comment the way he did. And I know Wheeler and Scheifele have always been pretty good buddies by the looks of things, but I don't know. You kind of wonder what's going on behind the scenes there. And based on what everything is said, I think we're going to see significant seismic change within Winnipeg. I am not sure that anybody is off limits. I know they, on the 32 Thoughts segments, podcast, they even mentioned they wonder about the future of Connor Hellebuyck. They didn't suggest he was going to be traded, but, like everybody who's kind of, getting a little bit older, not really old, but, just kind of creeping away. You kind of start to wonder, do they want to be part of this? Do they want scenery change? Will the team really have anybody who's an untouchable? Outside of us hearing that they want to sign Dubois long term, and if they can't, they may look to trade him. You really got to wonder what the direction that they think this team is going to have major surgery. I'm really surprised Chevy's getting another kick at the can here. He's been there a really long time, and this team has not accomplished a whole lot, and yet he keeps getting opportunity. I wonder if he's the guy to take him through another retool, rebuild, or whatever it's going to be, because, they already went through a bit of a rebuild, and this is like a cautionary tale, you could say, that even though things might look good on paper, it can implode on you in a heartbeat. Really, things have never been the same ever since they lost Dustin Byfuglien. And, of course, they had to trade Jacob Trouba, which is something he forced. Byfuglien, of course, basically walked out and decided to retire abruptly. Tyler Myers left free agency. The blue line was depleted, and they went from being Western Conference finalist to struggling, and they've never been able to find it again. And that, I think they're missing some leadership by the sounds of things. And, we'll see what happens, but it's going to be very, very interesting times in the Jets organization this offseason. Let me know what you think they're going to do in the comments, and we'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.